this game would have been awful. Everybody says got canceled because of stolen code, regional infighting, bad working environments, or this guy, but nobody wants to tell you the real reason Sonic X-Treme got canceled was because it sucked. If you're interested, the prototype builds are out there, and for some reason people like these. But this doesn't mean Sonic X-Treme was good. After 25 years of being told Sonic X-Treme is a hidden treasure, there's no other Sonic game like it, and it's the only game that could have saved the Sega Saturn, you're gonna go into this with a... You'd think it's obvious, but when you already want to play a game, despite its glaring issues, it's going to change how you think of it when you go out of your way to play it.
That's pretty good.
Having a doesn't magically make a game good or bad, and sometimes it does the exact opposite, especially when your expectations are way higher than the game could ever deliver. It makes sense to end up hating this when you expected it to be this, and end up loving this when you expected it to be this.
Certified freak, 7 days a week.
But when you expect an unfinished buggy mess, and you get an unfinished buggy mess, it's easy to appreciate what the prototypes did right because you already know what they did wrong. So, playing the prototypes with a historical or developmental mindset, these are actually pretty cool. And fans have fully remade Sonic X-Treme's levels and mechanics in ways that fix all the bugs, add more levels, more music, more characters, multiplayer. But the fan projects all share one problem. No matter how cool they are, they can't change the original, even if we really want them to. So we can't judge a game on its fan projects, and it really wouldn't be fair to judge it on unfinished prototypes, making the only way for me to criticize Sonic X-Treme is if I got my hands on the full thing. The only way for me to criticize Sonic X-Treme is if I got my hands on the full thing. Apparently Sonic X-Treme was a lot further along in development than we thought, and I'm finally allowed to show it off. As long as I blur out and change up some graphics, I could get my source in trouble. So, starting the game, already got some bad news. It's Green Hill Zone. Again. But just like in the early footage, the levels are made of a lot of cubes. You can run up walls, collect rings, enter bonus levels. You can even bounce off mushrooms like in Sonic and Knuckles.
Wait a minute!
Yes, this is actually bug for the Sega Saturn, not Sonic X-Treme. But the similarities between the two games are not an accident.
So we signed our contract and we're like, wow, we're going to do a launch Sonic the Hedgehog title for the Saturn.
Obviously, this Sonic game was never Sonic X-Treme and was never going to be. But bug's impact affected what would become of Sonic X-Treme way more than people realize. Not only did both games get little access to the dev kits, no support from Japan, and employees almost working themselves to death during crunch, it's really no secret this thing wasn't selling very well, meaning the games for it definitely didn't sell very well. But when Bug released, compared to the other Saturn games, it wasn't hard to be top 10 when your biggest competition is region-locked import-only titles and Minnesota Fats.
People now call me the...
Despite more modern reviews, at the time, people really loved Bug. Partly because there just wasn't much else to play, but also because 3D platforming still looked like this. And even if people hate the game now, it makes sense why a Sonic game would adapt Bug's gameplay, especially when Bug's gameplay was adapted from what they planned to use for Sonic to begin with. But taking a cult classic, adding some filters, and clicking 2x doesn't make it any less of a cult classic. And adding another cult classic to the Saturn library really wouldn't have changed things. But just because Sonic X-Treme couldn't save the Saturn doesn't mean cool mechanics can't be revisited and adapted into future games. So I'm sure if Sonic X-Treme was really that good, Sonic could try these mechanics again, and the game would be well received by fans. Okay, but this doesn't count, because the Wii U only sold a little bit better than the Saturn. Obviously, it looks like a lot of people don't actually like long automated sections, unreliable movement, and motion sickness. It also doesn't help that Sonic Lost World is Sonic Lost World. Now, if we got all this in 1996, this would have been pretty cool, because until this guy showed up, this was the standard. And the thing is, I really like Bug for the same reasons I really like Sonic Lost World. Because with enough time and practice, what seems janky and broken at first can be a very rewarding experience, especially for speedrunning. But if you need to play a game for several hours just to find out you can hold X to stay in place on walls instead of just damage boosting this one obstacle, it's not your fault you don't like the game. Bug had the same problem, and it constantly throws new gimmicks at you in every single level. Games like this just aren't approachable for new players. At least with Sonic Lost World, you have these things to teach you how to play, but nobody likes being forced to wait through tutorials just to learn how to play the game. Most Saturn games didn't have tutorials like this, so unless Sonic fans in the 90s decided to read manuals, nobody would understand Sonic X-Treme's unique mechanics. So canceling it makes more sense than putting it on store shelves for nobody to buy. But Sonic isn't a stranger to releasing games people don't like. This still came out. So did this. And this. And all of these. At this point, a Sonic game doesn't even need to be a game to come out. Meaning, the only other reason I could be glad Sonic X-Treme got canceled is... After Sonic X-Treme got canceled, SEGA was desperate to fill the void. Sonic Adventure would inevitably get pushed to the Dreamcast, leaving this guy with nothing to do until then. Several Sonic games only exist because X-Treme got canceled. If you hate these games, you probably won't think it was a fair trade. But if you know how much fun these games can be, you know why I'm glad X-Treme is gone. And if you don't know, you can find out here.